Hello, beautiful stars. Courtney here, Stars of the Morning Light. And we have finally, for a very long time, we've been waiting, Dr. Benjamin Goins here again. And tonight we also have his lovely wife, Sherry, a dear friend of mine. So thank you, Ben and Sherry, for delighting us with your presence today. Hi, Ben. Hi, Sherry.
Hello.
Hi.
Um, Guys, I do have to say out there to our audience, you beautiful stars, the last video I did with Ben was taken down by YouTube. It's been quite a while because of his life, my life, everybody's life. And tonight is maybe a little bit less about his most perfect detox system that is still on sale. Contact me at starsofthemorninglight at gmail.com. It's on sale through me. Ben, this is a different kind of story, isn't it? We're going to be talking about Saint Nick.
This is a Christmas special, definitely.
Yes, I love it. Well, let's go right in.
Well, the name of the article is Santa's Dowry, a message of Christmas freedom.
I love it.
Okay, so it is about Santa, but it's about this weird concept of dowry, which I did a lot of research on, and ultimately I found a message of freedom in there. So it is a very involved article. But starting out the meditation, I was meditating on Santa Claus.
Okay.
Okay. And the question I was asking is, okay, well, we know what Santa brings nowadays, but what in the original story did Santa actually bring as a gift?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
and if you look into that, do you know what the answer is?
Before I read your article, I was looking, and you know, there's always these different videos of like, there's Santa here, there's Santa there, there's Santa. And I think I stumbled upon the one that you're talking about that I don't know if myself and the audience would necessarily know. I mean, I'm sure there's a few people, but you're talking about the one from Turkey or whatnot that.
Yes. So I've done a lot of research on Santa. I did the Grinch newsletter with the poem about Santa last year. And I researched everything about Santa that wasn't Saint Nick, but it turns out the American Santa Claus was basically brought from the Dutch Sinterklaas, who was from Saint Nick. So the person known as Nicholas is still the most direct where Santa Claus comes from. So if you do a little background checking on who was Saint Nick, turns out he was this Greek guy who was a bishop in Turkey. Okay. So he was in Turkey, but he wasn't necessarily Turkish. He was Greek, and he was in the Roman Empire. Okay. So he was basically a Hellenic Roman bishop in Turkey.
Right.
Okay. So that's kind of a lot to process because you're thinking Roman, you're thinking Greek, you're thinking Turkish customs. So I mean, it's very, very foreign from America and how it went to Germany and Dutch and then became American Santa. I mean, this is back like in the third, fourth century AD, like almost 2,000 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. So what did he then? Because I mean, you have to be something to become a saint.
Right. And so who was this guy? So just figuring out, understanding where he was and where he was in time, where he was in location, then you can ask, what was he bringing for Christmas? That was the question I had. And do you know what he brought?
Well, clearly a dowry of some sort.
He brought a dowry. And then I'm like, what the hell is a dowry?
Oh, no way. Sherry, did your husband, let me ask Sherry, sorry, but did your husband turn to you and say, what's a dowry? Do you know, lady?
No, I don't think he's ever asked me that.
I can just imagine the conversations between a married couple when dowry comes up.
No, I don't think that was even in the equation. I actually proposed to him.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, actually.
Good. I love hearing. Oh, let's break for a moment. Can you give us a little synopsis of the viewers would love to hear that?
No, we're not going to get sidetracked. She said she didn't want to talk about our personal stuff. We have a lot of plenty other things to talk about. So anyway, what a dowry is. Dowry was very complicated to understand what it is. It was so complicated. It took me about a year of meditation to really be able to get it. But at the simplest thing, it was a gift, and it was some kind of gift that would be given to the bride, somehow related to marriage.
Right.
Okay. So it could be in a marriage contract, may or may not be, but it was some kind of usually monetary gift, or sometimes land or whatever. And somehow, and it was related to marriage, and it's related to inheritance rights, property rights, and what I figured out, women's rights. It's really about women's rights. And what it really was about is it's this very complicated subject of slavery and freedom. And that's what this article is about, as I'm saying, it's Santa's message of freedom. And so if you read the article, what it really was about, Santa was bringing freedom. So in the story, what happened was, it says that this guy that we know, St. Nicholas, brought dowry money to this guy with 3 daughters, who was going to have to sell his daughters into slavery if he didn't get this money. Okay, so it had the topic of slavery in there. It had the topic of money, Santa bringing money, and somehow that money, which was a dowry, was somehow keeping these women out of slavery.
Well, so dowry, how most women, I guess maybe men don't know this, but most women, we grow up knowing what a dowry is. At least,
I would expect women would know it more than men, for sure.
Yeah.
But so
it looks like Sherry has something to say.
Yeah, I'm remembering that throughout my teenage years, I was given like cookware and kitchen items, and they were going in, quote, my hope chest.
Right.
So my hope chest was something that I would use to help establish my household whenever I got married. So in that way, my dowry was cookware, which is also a bit sexist.
Yep.
Well, and yeah, so the dowry, what a dowry was, really determined what time what location and what time in history you were, as to what it would be, what side of the family it came from, and so it was really a changing target to understand what dowry is, because you really have to ask, what is dowry in a certain time? However, we're looking at a very certain time and place. We're looking at 4th century AD Turkey. What is a dowry there?
Right.
And why is it related to slavery? And so to understand that topic, I read a whole book called Babylon, the Origin of Mesopotamian Culture, or something that I mentioned. It's got a picture of it with the in the thing. So I had to understand ancient Sumerian culture that was related to the Turkish culture to really get my head around what was going on to this. And obviously it's about slavery and freedom. And I also read another book on the Constitution, the Foundations of Freedom, It's Good to Be King, which I also mentioned in the book. And also the third thing I was looking at was an ancient, we found a cuneiform marriage contract from ancient Turkey.
Oh.
From about 1,000 years before the time of Santa. Okay,
wow.
But it was in the same location.
Yeah.
Earlier, but it definitely was a marriage contract. It talked about dowry and slavery, and definitely that, because it was from the same location, influenced the idea of what was going on with this marriage stuff with Santa a little bit later.
Right. Okay? So let me get the full scope then. We're in Turkey very, very long ago. Some dad, obviously he had 3 daughters and probably could not afford a dowry for them to be able to wed them off. And the other option then would be into slavery, prostitution, because I think this is more sex slavery, prostitution stuff. So this unfortunate man, Saint Nick,
who's a bishop, he's a bishop, Christian bishop.
The Greek bishop comes and gives him
dowry money.
The dowry money, so he would be able to wed them off, opposed to slavery. Got it.
Yes, and that's just such a foreign concept to even think about or talk about to an American audience. But when you understand the ancient culture, you figure out what's going on. So the real key that I had to figure out is why were they being sold into slavery? And it was because of taxation. So in these ancient empires, you paid your taxes. If you didn't pay your taxes, you would sell your children, your wife, yourself into slavery. Okay.
Right.
And so that was how the ancient cultures work. And that's still how it worked in the Roman Empire. You paid your taxes to the Roman emperor, or you were going into slavery, or you would sell your wife into slavery, or you'd sell your kids into slavery. And they usually would do it in that order: sell your kids first, and sell your wife, then sell yourself. Usually the guys would want to sell themselves into slavery. They would rather sell their wives, their daughters off first. So this idea, so it doesn't say it in the story, but I really think it's implied that this guy was behind in his taxes.
Yeah.
And so because he was behind in his taxes, that's not part of the story, but I think that's the only way to really understand the story, is he must have been behind on his taxes to the Roman emperor. And if he didn't have a way to pay those taxes, they were going to take his daughters into slavery to pay those taxes.
And to think that this is probably very commonplace. So it's interesting that this bishop, this Saint Nick, decided to do this. Like something came over his heart and he just said,
so that is how he is shown as the hero in this story. If you miss the big picture, he is presented as the Christmas hero because he swoops in with the dowry money. Now he's saving these girls from a life of prostitution. They can get married off to respectable Roman families, I guess, you know? So he is portrayed as the hero. And I also show how he is very clearly an Orion constellation reference. The three daughters is like the three belts of Orion.
He thinks everything is an Orion.
And I figured out.
So if nobody heard that because Ben was talking still, Sherry, what was that?
He thinks everything is an Orion constellation reference. I'm not saying he's wrong about that, but he sees a lot of similarities.
You
but with Santa, he definitely 100% is. It is from so this comes from the Greek side, to understand that this guy in Turkey was a Greek. Okay.
Yes.
In the Greek culture, they had the heroic culture. Okay. And when you're a hero, it was like the cult of Hercules. They're looking at the Orion constellation, and whoever was a hero, they would put you up there in the stars as a model. And that's what a saint is. So Santa was put up there as this was a model guy. So he was like a hero. So he became a saint. But it was from this Greek concept of equating him with the Orion constellation. Anyway, you don't have to believe me on that, but I swear 100% that's true. And I confirmed it. So anyway, so that's, hopefully you can understand the story now. We're in Turkey. You pay your taxes, or your girls go into slavery. Santa is being portrayed as the hero because he's bringing dowry money to save these girls. That is the story of the original Christmas of St. Nicholas. Okay.
Yes. Groovy with me. I don't want to go into slavery. I love Santa Claus. That's good with me. How did you though kind of wrap this up in a nice little bow about freedom?
So yeah, so what this story really is about, it's about freedom for women. It's about women's rights. And to really understand, you have to look at it geographically and through time up to present. Okay, where they were, where we are now. And it's just kind of a snapshot in the history of women's rights.
Wow.
But the way that worked, so the idea was that Santa is saving girls from slavery, okay? And then up to the modern times, I read the book on the Constitution, how in America, we've actually gotten rid of slavery and women have the vote and everything. And the big deal was with the dowry. There was a thing in Middle Ages, the way the dowry worked. Well, I don't know how I want to get into this, but basically the way dowry worked not so long ago, and even dowry was inherited into America through the common law, through England.
Right.
And the English common law goes all the way back to like Hammurabi and the Babylonian Empire stuff.
Right.
Okay. So that common law stuff goes thousands of years before Santa, thousands of years past Santa, this idea, but it comes from the very origins of civilization. And it was really based on slavery, female sex slavery in particular, and the progression of how we got out of that. Okay. And Christianity is kind of a snapshot, with Santa bringing this dowry to save women for slavery. It's kind of a snapshot on the path of women's rights getting out of slavery. Is how you, it's kind of a good way to look at it.
Right. Sherry, when, as the woman in Ben's life, when he was putting this article together and he said, I see all this, I see what's happening here. Did you contribute at all, or did you kind of, how did you think and feel about his discoveries?
So normally whenever he's writing his newsletters, I just kind of give him space to do the, I just give him space to do the research he needs to do and put to words what he's thinking. Some of the things that cross my mind while reading it is that I found it interesting that in ancient times, women were fighting for, only to get a third of their property rights through the dowry system. And I found it interesting that in modern times that at least got up to 50%. And in that way, American women have achieved more freedom than in ancient times. But I also think that it deserves to be said that on a global scale, sex slavery still exists, and that it is an ongoing issue, and that's a reality in many countries still. There's a lot of Middle Eastern countries that do not have the same female rights that we do. And I'm not saying that obviously American women have all their, necessarily all the rights that we should. There's still work to be done. But obviously we come a long way. And there's a way to honor the past and the journey we've taken with keeping an eye that there's room for improvement.
Yeah, I agree. And audience, I want to point out there, I'm not sure if we are getting the picture of Sherry while she's talking as we're recording here. And I don't want to fumble with the camera too much. So Sherry, I'm sure we're catching your voice. We might not be able to see your beautiful smile. Sherry, so Santa Claus to me actually ties into this too, because the whole season for me is light. And Santa kind of represents that big light that lives within us that can grow and expand and be generous and take care of others and show up for those in need, like this story. And I always for me at this season, I take it in as this is the time to remember that, to remember just that, regardless of the Christmas trees and all of this and all of that, and to remember that we can be the light that changes the world. And so I agree with you. Is there still a lot going on in the world? Yes. To be able to, as Ben did, look at the progression is just as needed, so we don't lose hope, for that we can keep going. Does that exactly what you were saying, Sherry? I totally agree. And I think what's interesting is, Ben, even if we knew this story, I don't think many of us, even us women, like when we hear dowry or we hear this, it's been so many centuries that it kind of just goes in and out. It just goes in and out, and we don't pay attention to the whole circumstances and the whole life and the whole existence of, okay, if this is the representation, he did what was needed to be done so these women could be saved from something tragic. And that is a way better story than most at this time, right?
And I do share my husband's passion for history. And I found it interesting whenever he spoke about how in Christianity, when the dowry traditions were brought over, the Pope or the father of the church kind of stepped in. And it reminded me of actually a TV series that we watched called Sophia, where, and in Sophia, and this is run in Russia, and there was a princess that was basically not necessarily sold, because it was an arranged marriage to the Russian emperor, and there was a whole thing about whether or not her dowry was being paid. And that connects back to what Ben was saying about the importance of dowry and how it connected to Christianity.
So the way it ended up working in the Middle Ages times is that the church was mainly concerned about selling off princesses, rich women, okay? Women from respectable families had a lot of money, and they were not prostitutes because they came with money. So their dad was going to put up a fortune to come with them. There was a Shakespeare, like, if you be the man to ride her, she comes with jewels in the saddle kind of thing, you know. So the rich Christian women would come with money, supposed to be put up by their father, but usually it would be put up by the church, their church father. So the Christian women came with money, but there was a string attached that they don't usually talk about. And there probably was a string attached with the Santa story that they didn't talk about. Do you know what that is? The woman, she came with money, but she actually got a claim of 1/3 of the prince's lands that she married.
Okay.
Okay. And that was a big deal. Like in the Middle Ages, like they have some women inheriting 1/3 of the country of France. It's not trivial sometimes when the royalty would get involved. And so it was kind of like the Pope was like the international arbitrator as the father, marrying off princesses and doing it became a real estate thing, honestly.
Yes.
Okay. But the way, figuring out how that connected to freedom took me a lot of meditation. But what it came down to, I'll try to explain it as simplest as I can. Back in the ancient days, there were only two paths to get out of slavery for women. Okay. Women started off basically slaves. As children, they were property of their father. Okay. The path for a respectable woman would be to marry. Then they became the property of their husband. Then they would produce some children. And if they outlived their husband, they would get their dowry money and be an independent woman. So that was the only way. And when I say freedom, in a very practical sense, it was all about economic freedom back there, because it was like pay your taxes or you go into slavery. So freedom was economic freedom. Okay, being able to manage your own finances. And the only way that a woman could become free was, for a respectable woman, was to get married, make some children, outlive her husband, then she would get her dowry. And that was the only situation where the woman would then be in economic financial control of herself.
Right.
Okay. So marriage was viewed as a path for freedom for respectable women. Now there was another path for slave women. A lot of women went to sex slavery, stuff like that. In the ancient marriage contract we found, it actually talked about that. So a lot of times in these marriage contracts, if a wife was barren, then they would hire a slave wife, like a second wife, to make a baby for the family, and then the slave was given her freedom. So so it equated having children with freedom for non-rich women. So if you're a slave woman, you want to go find some rich people who will put you in their marriage contract, you can give them a baby and then get your freedom.
Okay, wow. A lot of us know that, you know, babies were born from the commoners, let's say the workers or whatnot, but we never, I don't know if I ever knew that it would get you your freedom as well.
Yeah, but so for rich and for slave women and for rich women, either one, having that baby was your freedom. Because for the rich woman, having that baby locked in your dowry, you wouldn't necessarily get your dowry money if you didn't have a baby to lock it in, because usually that was part of the marriage contract. And for slave women, usually providing children would pay for you getting out of slavery.
Wow.
Because you give up your baby for slavery. Okay.
And did it have to be a male, like a male baby?
If you look through the history of dowry, usually it was male. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually they wanted a male baby.
I mean, we all know.
We totally have control of that.
But it depends on what the marriage contract was. I mean, they had a bunch of different marriage contracts, but then over time in history, they became kind of the same contract, and then, or whatever the norm is. And like by the time of the Middle Ages, yeah, it was like, here, the Pope will give you a princess. She comes with money, but she gets 1/3 claim on your land because you have to treat her with respect because she's a princess. But in order for her to lock in her dowry, she has to produce you a male heir first.
Right.
So it usually was tied to a male heir, and at least what was passed down with the common law from the ancient culture to the English law to us. And obviously all that's not fair. So in order to get freedom for women, we had to get rid of slavery. We don't need the dowry system anymore. The women back then were fighting over a 1/3 of the land inheritance. Now, I think women in America can claim they've made it. There's like, oh, women need more rights. Women in America have made it. Okay, you get one half inheritance, and having babies isn't tied to freedom, and women have the right to vote. So basically, in America, women have made it. Is basically in other countries where they haven't had all this culture that we have to get to there, where they still have slavery, sex slavery. Anywhere with slavery, especially sex slavery, they're going to have that system. And in those cultures, it's really important for the respectable women who don't want to be prostitutes have to basically marry to get their freedom. And then, go ahead.
Ben, may I ask Sherry a question about that? Because it's interesting. We're roughly around the same age, grew up in America. When we hear stuff like that, like women have made it, I do agree, opposed to somewhere else. So women have here in the States have a whole lot more advantage. I think for me, it's more that interpersonal stuff, that stuff you grow up with, kind of like how you were talking about the hope chest. Yeah. I don't know if the generations below us are coming up different. But I know in my family, there's a lot that is said to us growing up. There's a lot that is done around us. There's a lot that the expectations of certain things that still feels often, if you don't do this by a certain time, or if you don't have this, or if you don't have that, you're still gonna be, well, now we call it the old cat lady instead of, that I think for at least here in the States, I do feel like that is still, for our generation at least, it was very prevalent. And then my grandmother, who was Catholic, if I didn't marry a Catholic, I was, which I'm not even Catholic, never was baptized, never confirmed. But if I did not marry a Catholic man, then it was like I'm fully going to hell. There is no salvation possible. So, I mean, what is said to us women, as far as what we should do and shouldn't do, it was still very prevalent, at least when I was a child growing up. How about you?
Yeah, there's always a whole bunch of messages that we receive from society as a whole that kind of ingrains itself in ourselves, in our psyche, even on a subconscious level. I mean, even if you look at most of the fairy tales, the princess is always waiting to get saved by the prince. And enough of that, hearing it repeatedly over and over and over again, can be unempowering, let's say. Right. There's an excellent book called Where the Girls At, or Where the Girls Are, or At, something like that. I read it in, I think, a sociology class in college, and it analyzes some of the messages that are being taught to young girls, in these Disney movies and fairy tales and all this pervasive stuff. Because there's a lot of stuff that's being passed down from mothers and grandmothers and culture, but there's a lot being passed down societally as well.
Yeah, so it's like kind of, so I love what you got going on, Ben. For us, I think growing up, it's with all that stuff being kind of drummed into us, even though there might not be a quote unquote dowry, we grow up with this feeling of we might not be able to make it and be successful if we don't have a man attached to us.
Oh yeah.
Big time. I think it's shifting now. So mentally, it's kind of as if you still have some kind of shackle to this marriage agreement, dowry system. You're not going to make it if you don't have a man.
I also think that some of the messages that are being conveyed to women vary by region also, because I think that some states or more rural areas, they're still not as advanced necessarily in their thought processes, and there's just so long of the habits and messages being brought back. You know, they just haven't advanced fast enough as some of the more developed regions of the US.
So from my perspective, it doesn't matter how advanced or not the people are, because the American laws are advanced, which you don't understand. Because what the ancient dowry was, it was like a bundle of rights that women could get. And it involved that dowry was also a form of inheritance rights. It was a type of like parental rights. It was a type of land ownership. I mean, it was a whole bundle of rights that women would get with that dowry. And in America, in the law, the rights are there now. You don't need the dowry anymore, because now women can get child support. You don't need the dowry to get 1/3 of the king's land, because you're going to get half of the land in a divorce settlement now. So like you don't need the dowry system's obsolete now, because we don't have slavery anymore. The dowry system's obsolete because now women have the right to vote. So it really made me appreciate America. Whatever people's views or opinions are, it's already hard coded into the laws in America in a way that is much better than all these countries that haven't advanced as far as getting past and beyond that dowry system, because we have that whole culture of getting away from that ancient Mesopotamian culture with England and then going to America. But still, it's still very recent, because we didn't outlaw slavery in America till not very long ago. Women did get the right to vote till not very long ago. Long ago. If you read the Constitution, there's slavery hardwired into the Constitution. Thou shalt not end slavery before a certain date. Are women and men created equal in the Constitution? No, it says all men are created equal. So these ideas, even though they're very ancient, and even though they're really great in America now, it's very modern. And so that's why a lot of the rest of the world and other countries have not caught up, like Sherry was saying. But here in America, women have it made, in my opinion.
I'm happy you're bringing it back to the laws, because it is what is in our laws that give us the freedom that we have, right?
Yeah.
And I was even talking to Brad the other night. I said, I think everybody forgets the word pursuit of happiness. Like, that is what America's founded on, the pursuit, not the delivery of, not the it's not insured, the pursuit. And now in today's world, you are right, Ben. We do all have the pursuit. That's all that's guaranteed, is the pursuit. The happiness part, the abundance part, the financial great, gain part, that's a part of the pursuit, but we all do have the pursuit. And so that, for me, that's very valuable. Very, very. And I think people forget that often, that it's a pursuit, and we here are able to do that.
An important thing in the book I read on the Constitution that I mentioned, It's Good to Be King, they said in the original draft of the Constitution, instead of pursuit of happiness, they were using the terms private property.
Oh.
Okay. So the pursuit of happiness, they were thinking being able to own property was how you pursue your happiness.
Yeah.
So
right.
And having and so the whole point of the Good to Be King book was that originally the King of England was the only one to allowed to own property, but then in America we transferred the power of the king to the people, in that we, the people in America, can own private property. And that's what makes us like kings and makes us free. So in that economic freedom, owning property, and especially the way that freedom was viewed for women throughout history, it was about property ownership. So it was transferring over where the woman is the property to now the woman can own property. Originally, the only way a woman could become free to own her own property was to get control of her dowry. And now that's not the case. Now men and women can own property equally in America. So America is awesome. That was a message of freedom that it kind of took a long way to get to. And then I was also very pleased, if you look at the area of Santa in Turkey, they had some really horrible times with the Ottoman Empire, but after that, they got beyond that, And the women in Turkey got the right to vote in 1930, only 10 years after the women in America.
Love it. Yeah.
Before a lot of other even European countries. So they still have issues, you know, because there's a lot of people from the old cultures that still, you know, assault them and stuff. But the women in the country of Turkey, which is the area of the story of Santa, have a great deal of freedom compared to the regions around them. So that was kind of, I didn't really get into that in the article, but that was a good news.
Yeah, it's always good news to hear that. Ben, so how did this make, when you're meditating on all this stuff and it being Christmas? Oh, Merry Christmas. I'm not going to forget you guys. So Merry Christmas, Ben and Sherry. It being Christmas, holidays, season of light, happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, everything. Love this time of year. How did this kind of put it into the scope of that for you?
Oh, well, I found some secret messages of the Christian religion, which I mentioned.
Hold on, something's there. We go. Are we back? Hold
so
on.
I get into the article at the end.
Ben,
your microphone, Sherry.
Sherry just did.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So this stuff is really secret information. And when I posted this article, it just like went down. This is not for everybody, but if you read the article and basically meditate on Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
There is some really, really lot of secret forbidden knowledge information in there that is just not for everyone. So I will say what I can, but I don't want to say too much because I don't want God to censor my article. But there is an underlying message of freedom and women's rights in the ancient Christianity. And I put it in there. It was kind of squashed by Roman times, so people kind of lost the message. But I'll read this little paragraph I wrote, and I put it in bold in the article. Mary Magdalene, in my opinion, was a virgin wife from the equivalent of the Temple of Aphrodite, who, although viewed as a prostitute, wasn't, except in high priestess sense. She was extremely rich and financed the career of Jesus and was the only one who understood his message in full. Christianity offered women an increase in women's rights at the time because it offered the idea that a prostitute could be redeemed and made like a virgin again. If she married to God, he would pay the full dowry price for her, like her being a virgin. Whether she was or wasn't no longer mattered in the eyes of God. Brides, in a way, gained freedom in Christianity because they could become like a man and marry Jesus as a bride who would give them all of his dowry as their dowry, a novel idea at the time that paved the way for the future of women's rights.
Oh, that was, Ben, you wrote that very good. Nice.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that implies that other than giving birth, another route to freedom or having more self-autonomy is just becoming a nun.
Yeah. Sherry, I do want to say I heard it all. You were kind of reverbing back, but I think that might have been the first time that my camera picked you up. So it's like we got double the sound of Sherry with at least an image. And you know, working with different electronics right now has been a little wackadoodle do. I agree, Sherry. Yes, definitely. And I think I like your message of the very, very early Christians, very, very, very early before corruption, very, very early, appreciate the women. Because if you do look into Mary Magdalene, she was the one that he would turn to and say, hey, where are we going next? She was the one that would communicate a bunch of stuff. She made a lot of the decisions. And he kept it that way. He wanted it that way. Even when some of the men like Peter would be like, why are we listening to her? He, you know, he'd be like, because she's the one that knows, you know, Peter, go sit in a corner. You still haven't gotten it, buddy. But early before the corruption, it was there. So the fact that the spark of that, the concept of that was could still be present throughout the history of corruption to where we are today. This is all very hopeful for me. This is all extreme hope. We can look at all of the horrible stuff of today and let it drench us into misery, or we can see when you connect the dots that little strings of hope can actually grow into huge fields of freedom, right?
Focus on the good.
So I said message of Christmas freedom, because there really was a message of Christmas freedom in there, but I had to go through, meditating on slavery and all these horrible things before I got there. But I understand it incomplete. And I got some blessings from Mary Magdalene of some really awesome knowledge of Christianity, ways I've never looked at it before. One is, if you understand that Joseph was taking Mary and their donkey to Bethlehem to pay their taxes, and you understand that in the Roman Empire, if you didn't pay your taxes, you were going into slavery. Okay?
Yeah.
So think about this. Joseph is taking Mary and his donkey to go pay the Roman taxes, and he doesn't know how much these taxes are going to be.
Right.
So he's thinking, am I going to have to sell my donkey? Am I going to have to sell my wife? Am I going to have to sell myself? He doesn't know. Right? And so this idea that like Joseph is taking Mary and his donkey, well, he's taking Mary because he might have to sell her into slavery.
Right.
And then imagine her having a baby, and then that baby being a king, and wise men show up and give them gifts, and like they're so happy because now he's like, I don't have to sell my wife into slavery anymore. Pay the taxes. How that's just a really weird. I've never looked at that Christmas story from that angle before.
Right.
But that
I think of some of the viewers going, well, yeah, and we're still kind of enslaved by taxes.
And the modern part is hard to understand, but I think that we probably are under some kind of Babylonian slavery system still. It's just now it's like debtor versus creditor. So like debtor is the slave, creditor is not the slave. And Jesus plays the role of whoever can give forgiveness for debt is like forgiveness for sin. So I wasn't able to get into that, but that does exist. So there is this, if there is still a slave system in place, it has to do with debit and credit, but I wasn't able to get that far in this meditation.
Right.
Comment, except, but you can be free. Basically, freedom is a state of mind. And then the kind of freedom in these ancient types of stuff was economic freedom, which was the right to own property and not be a slave and not be, and it really ties to the government, not being sold into slavery to pay your taxes kind of thing. Exactly. And that's where it comes in with our church. Sherry has a church that owns some land, and we don't want to pay the taxes because we want to pay the taxes to ourselves, as church tithes. So to us, economic slavery is not paying taxes, and that's what it was in the ancient times as well. So.
Right. So Sherry, the church is with you?
Yes. For this one, I am the executive director.
We have two churches, I May Do Foundation and Whole Life Center Church. Yeah.
Okay. Well, however, I think as you guys are in the same room, whenever it's starting to reverb back on each other. So Ben, you are the I May Do Foundation.
I'm the executive director of I May Do Foundation, and I'm managing director of Whole Life Center Church. And she's executive director of Whole Life Center Church and the managing director of I May Do Foundation. So we're on the boards of both churches. But yeah, we think of it as like I'm like the boss of I May Do, and she's like the boss of Whole Life Center. Yeah.
Right. Can you tell me a bit about what the facilities at the church? Because I've seen pictures, and I don't have them up to use right now. But can you tell us a little bit about? And Sherry, I don't know why you were reverbing back. Maybe something changed. But will you tell us what people can go and experience?
Yeah. So the reason why I'm reverbing is because we are in the same room, Ben and I. So his voice is coming over on my microphone, and my voice is coming over on his microphone if we don't mute ourselves. But right now we're currently opening a public prayer garden that people can use.
Can you mute yourself so we can maybe hear Sherry better?
I don't think that's the reason why. I have a microphone.
Yeah, see the microphone symbol see your microphone symbol on the lower left. Okay, I will try that.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, so we're in the process of opening a prayer garden that people can use for meditation, and also we'll be offering some sort of monthly services. We're still kind of collaborating to try to figure out what those will look like, where it'll be open to the public for people to come and meditate and experience their spirituality and congregate. And we're also in the middle of building a sanctuary too.
And you build these buildings out of all organic matter stuff, right? Like they're all.
Yes, that's correct. It's all organic material that comes from the earth in one way, shape, or form. So sand, clay, gravel.
Wow, and that's your meeting. That's your gathering house.
My computer is about to die, so I'm just gonna say goodbye while I keep talking. I've got 1% battery left.
Well, we're just about out of time, anyways.
Yeah. Well, Ben, Merry Christmas to you. I'll finish up with Sherry and send you guys all off. This has been a great show. A very good show. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Sherry. Real quick, where is this church?
We are in the farthest northwest corner of Georgia, near the town of Trenton.
Trenton, Georgia. Okay, because I'm there in January as well to see all this stuff, and maybe I can do a little bit of filming as to what people would be able to experience, because the pictures I've seen is lovely. So Trenton, we'll get up there and record a bit. So happy holidays.
I just want to create a space that people can use out and enjoy nature.
Yeah, and come together in whatever spiritual journey they're in.
Yeah, doesn't
that sound nice?
Yeah, it does. It does, without the dogma and the rules and restrictions, and yeah, it sounds very nice. Yeah. I'll do that. I'm sure the audience is like, yes, Courtney, go film.
We'd love
to have you.
Yeah, so I'll get up there and we'll do some filming of the location where people can just gather and be with each other, in spirit and harmony. And also see how you can build from the land sustainably.
Yes, we are trying to be the change that we want to see in the world.
Yes. So I know Ben clicked out, his computer probably died.
I did.
So happy holidays to both of you. It was such a pleasure for myself to see you, but I also know that others really enjoyed seeing you, Sherry. They,
I hope so.
Yeah, we're kind of a community here at Stars of the Morning Light, and so they adore Ben. So it's always see who he's attached to, and we talk about you occasionally. So it's good to put a face to the name.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays. Ben, I'm sure you can still hear me. You're in the room. Happy holidays, my dear. And to all you beautiful stars, oh my goodness, enjoy, embrace the light. You are free. It's a mentality. Yes. So happy holidays. Love to everybody. I'll see you later, beautiful stars. Have a great weekend. Bye, guys.
Bye.